thank you for coming. It's a beautiful day, except it's going to be a little warm. And first thing we'd like to start off with is our national anthem. Would everyone please stand for our national anthem? Everyone be seated. Our chaplain, Nate Georges, will lead us in prayer.
Everybody please stand up. Almighty God, Father of all mankind and Judge over the nations, we ask you to bless the memorial service and to look down with flavor and understanding upon the hearts of those who are gathered here to pay their tribute to those that have made the supreme sacrifice. And for the benefit of all free men everywhere, the lives of those who paid the supreme sacrifice are glorious before us. Their deeds constitute a daily inspiration for those like ourselves who remain in their home communities. In God we trust, and may the faith of our fathers guide, protect, and sustain our people. Amen.
Okay, everyone, please be seated.
Sure this time.
Next thing on the agenda is the Odam Community Band playing America the Beautiful. is never over. Missions may end, but the legacies left and the pain of their absence endure. By the time our last remaining troops returned from Iraq in December 2011, nearly 4,500 of their comrades lost their lives during Operation Iraqi Freedom and New Dawn. We continue to lose American heroes every day in Afghanistan and in military training accidents and missions around the world. The loss to their families, friends, fellow service members, and country is permanent. Some were only teenagers, and most of those killed were under age 25. In the eyes of their loved ones, they are forever young. Remembering our fallen once a year is not enough. The widows, widowers, fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, and children remember every day. The empty seat at the dinner table, the smaller gathering on Thanksgiving, the voice of a loved one heard only as a distant memory are constant reminders that they are gone. But there are also people who can enjoy time with their families because of the sacrifices that others have made. Scripture tells us that greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Marine Corporal Jason Dunham epitomized this. A 22-year-old native of upstate New York, Corporal Dunham was on patrol when his unit was attacked in Iraq. When the enemy hurled a grenade, Corporal Dunham used his helmet and body to smother the explosive, absorb the blast, and save his fellow Marines. 8 days later, on April 22nd, 2004, he died from the injuries inflicted by the blast. He was the first Marine to receive the Medal of Honor since the Vietnam War. From the American Revolution to the global war on terrorism, 1 million American men and women like Corporal Dunham have made the supreme sacrifice. They died so that we could continue to cherish the things they love: God, country, and family. That is why we are gathered here on Memorial Day, to honor the memory of our fallen warriors who have given everything for their country. We are also reminded on this day that in each generation, brave men and women will always step forward to take the oath of allegiance as members of the America's armed forces, willing to fight and, if necessary, die for the sake of freedom. In reflecting on the sacrifices of their comrades during World War II, the founders of American Legion saw 4 common reasons, or pillars, as we call them, as to why Americans so often in the past and still to this day answer their nation's call, even to the point of sacrificing their lives. They do it to provide a strong national defense, to keep America safe and secure against those enemies who would destroy our way of life. They do it for their fellow comrades, for those fighting by their side against all odds, and for those who eventually separate from the military but proudly proclaim their status as veterans. They do it for American core values of God and country, family, patriotism, and our religious heritage. They do it for American core values of God and country. They do it for their children so they can grow up in an America that is strong and free. It is through this last pillar, the children, that we can continue the spirit of Memorial Day each and every day. More than 6,400 American men and women have died in Afghanistan and Iraq in the latest wars. Many were parents. The innocence of their grieving children will be challenged by the dramatic change affecting the balance of security and comfort in their family routine. Their hearts will feel the sharp sting of their loss, leaving them only with memories of their loving mom and dad. Life as they have known it will be much harder from now on. There are many tangible things we can do to honor the service of our fallen hero. First and foremost is to take care of their families. In some cases, this means providing financial assistance to help their children obtain higher education. This is why the American Legion established the American Legion Legacy Scholarship Fund. Across our country, the American Legion is raising funds to ensure that college education will be a reality for these families. We honor the living comrades of the fallen, the wounded, injured, and ill members of our armed forces through programs like Operation Comfort Warrior, Heroes to Hometowns, and through the work of American Legion service officers. Oftentimes, these veterans are surprised that so many want to help. We don't do this because of any requirements. We do it because we want to. It is simply the right thing to do. Memorial Day is not about picnics and parades, although there's nothing wrong with enjoying and celebrating our American way of life. But Memorial Day is really about remembering those who made our way of life possible. Army Sergeant Dennis Weichel was one such man. Sergeant Weichel enlisted in the Rhode Island National Guard in 2001. He successfully completed a tour in Iraq in 2005 and was redeployed to Afghanistan in 2012. When a young Afghan boy was picking up shell casings in the middle of the road, Sergeant Weichel acted with what his friends say was characteristic instinct. He pushed the boy from the path of a moving armored vehicle and sacrificed his own life so the boy could live. His friend, Staff Sergeant Ronald Corbett, said he would have done it for anyone. That was the way he was. He would give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. So 3 young children in Rhode Island sacrificed their father so another young child could live. Thank you, Sergeant Weichel. The sacrifice that you and your fellow Americans have made will not be forgotten. One other group of veterans need to be honored and remembered here today, and that is the POW MIAs. More than 83,000 Americans are missing and unaccounted from World War II, the Korean War, the Cold War, the Vietnam War, and the 1991 Gulf War. One of my uncles on my mother's side is one of those statistics. He joined the Army in the late 40s and fought in the Korean War. During the early part of that war, he was listed as missing in action. As a young child at that time, I could not comprehend the anguish the family must have gone through, not knowing whether he was dead or alive. Was he a prisoner of war? Was he killed in action and buried by the enemy? No one knew, and no remains were ever recovered. So on this day, let us honor and remember all our fallen heroes. May God bless them, and God bless you for being here today. Thank you. And now we'll have the Old Dam Community Band are going to sing a medley of the service songs. When they play your branch of service, please stand. Kaylant is going to give us some interesting facts and trivia on vets. So here's Kaylant. She's the director on the board of directors here at the cemetery.
Interesting facts about veterans and also some of the residents here at Rose Hill. This morning here in Newburgh, we have joined together to honor the sacrifices that have been made by our nation, free and strong. All across our nation, in small towns everywhere, people are holding quiet Memorial Day ceremonies. Proud veterans are pinning on their medals. Children are laying wreaths. Men and women in uniform stand a little bit higher today and salute the colors. I feel most certain that anyone here can remember, if you're old enough, like me, can remember that day or that Sunday afternoon in December 1941. I can remember where I was and what I was doing. The nation was at war. Warwick County was at war. Newburgh was at war. It was like no other time. We had been a quiet little river town. Nothing particular was going on, and the people here living here didn't have anything unusual, like I said, going on. But the sons and daughters began to go off to distant battles. It was patriotism from the word go. Signs of the time were quickly appearing everywhere. Bulk ice cream at Wells Falls drugstore was in demand and was actually halted because of the sugar shortage. Patriotic banners and posters pushing defense stamps and bonds appeared, and other posters recruiting young men for military service. Air raids were held. Extension agents, rural post carriers cut down on their service to conserve tires. Daylight savings time was year-round. People were able to save because there was very little left to buy. And President Roosevelt stated that all able-bodied men ages 18 to 38 would be drafted into the Army by the end of 1943. They had no choice. And Newburgh sent our share, and many of them did not return. Corrice Allen, he was killed in action. He died when he was 32. He left 4 children here in Newburgh. His daughter Abby Allen lays beside him now, who was we buried just last year. Roland Hurley, he was killed in action at Iwo Jima. He was only 19, and he received the Purple Heart. His mother, Hallie Hurley, is also here, and she made beautiful pies for the Cafe a la Mode. Paul Perdue, he was killed when 2 planes crashed coming back from Germany to England. Paul was 23. We have William Walker Hargrave. He spent 18 years in the Navy. He was a survivor of Pearl Harbor. He was captain in World War II. His plane went down in the East Indies, and he was listed as missing in action for 3 months. And then he led all of his crew to safety. He received the Silver Star. He also served in Korea, and he died of a heart attack, though, when he was only 43. James Elmer Allen. He was in World War I. He was a charter member of the American Legion, and he was lockmaster at the dam for many years, along with Elmer Breeden. Elmer worked at the dam for 38 years. Some of their relatives are here this morning. James Allen and Elmer Breeden are buried here in Rose Hill, and also their spouses and some of their children. Ralph Swickel, World War II, practiced medicine here in Newburgh for 50 years. Ross Meyer, World War II, attorney for over 50 years here in Newburgh and was a Superior Court judge. Carl Kutz, World War II. He was held back a year in school because he ate so much paste. But he went on to serve in General Patton's army. He was 65. Charles Inskeep, over here. He was in the Navy and he was very intelligent. He served as a research consultant for the U.S. government. Donald Bright. He was stationed at Pearl Harbor on the morning of December 7th, 1941. He received the Purple Heart as well as the Bronze Star. He also served in the Korean War. Earl Parker is here in Rose Hill. As far as I know, he's the only POW that we have buried here. He was a POW in Germany. Harold Barnett was killed in action in France. He was 24. Clarence Washington was in both World War I and World War II, as well as 12 others here in Rose Hill who served in both wars. Some other Newburgh people that we might remember. Ruth Wiggin served at the, Ruth Wiggin worked at Shivion's department store for 28 years along with Selma Breezes. She was 46 years old when she retired. And then there's their sister Ruth Breezes, and she taught school here for 35 years. Oscar Breezes had a feed and grain mill for over 50 years. Harold Breezes, degree in electrical engineering, and he had the Breezes drugstore, or Breezes grocery store right next to the high school. And the Breezes sisters, Ethel, Florence, and Benita, they lived across the road here for many years, and I think they kept watch here on our cemetery. Victoria Gardner, we all remember her, and we called her Mom Gardner. She was at the toll gate at Paffin's Lake for years. Carl Pafflin, he had the lake for 83 years. Della, his wife. Mildred Barnes, his daughter. Gerald Pafflin and Earl Pafflin. Then we remember Eddie and Ethel Taylor. Ethel's Eat Shop, next door to the Princess Theater. It had greasy hamburgers. Errol Pierce, he was a grocery man here in Newburgh for 42 years. Russell Weldon, he collected over 3,000 pictures of Newburgh, and they're in our library archives now. And I remember the day that little Tommy Mosen was hit and killed by a car in front of his grandparents' house on Jennings Street here in Newburgh. Then there's Doc Wilhelmus, Ralph Meadows, Doc Calvin, Jimmy Cox, Clarence Westfall. He was a druggist here for 37 years, and he was the unofficial mayor of Newburgh. Grace Brenner was a telephone operator. However, I remember her as a secretary to the principal of the Newburgh High School. Catherine Jaquis, she was a custodian. She took in laundry and was a great artist. Most of her pictures were here in Old Newburgh. Franklin Wilkeson, that name doesn't mean a thing to me. He died when he was only 42. He was a great baseball player, and he was better known as Butter Wilkeson. John Gottman. John fell from a mountain in New Zealand, and it was in an inaccessible area, and his body was left there. Tombstones here along with his parents and grandparents are here. Sarah Washington was 89. Her husband Charles was killed by a hit-and-run driver in 1944. Mr. West, this is an interesting one. His name is actually Mr. West. He was a black man, and his mother gave him this name for a very good reason. And then there's, how can we ever forget Catherine and Herman Frobater? Andres Betts was one of the first caretakers of this cemetery. He was born in Germany right before the Civil War. Betty Ann Dickens was one of my classmates and best friends in both grade and high school. She died too young. Pee Wee Hall, he was a childhood friend. He also died too young, but it was pretty much his own fault. But he went the way he wanted to go, I guess. Craig Grimm, he died when he was only 16 years old. He took his own life, as well as several other people here in this cemetery. A couple of years later, after Craig's death, his mother was laid beside him. And then there's Wally Wilson. He had $1 million smile. Mary Boots lived right down the hill here, and she lies here in Rose Hill. After enjoying the lavish life in Europe, Paris and France and all different places, she lies exactly where she always wanted to be. And there's Catherine Hargrave, sister to Mrs. Burns, the Van Horn sisters, the Cook sisters. Bruce Lawhead has a shoe shop here in town. And this one really got me for a while. Henry Allen, John Hill, Henry Porter, and W.C. Porter. On their tombstone, Civil War tombstone, it just has U.S.C.T. U.S.C.T. I finally figured out what that was through government records. United States Colored Troops. The Castles, the Perdues, the Chases, the Moores, the Kaufmans, Mortons, Ellerbush, Liberts, they're all here at Rose Hill. And Katie Lamb's here. She was born into slavery. Most cemeteries are pretty much alike, at least in small town cemeteries. It's hard for me to say because Newburgh's the only small town I've ever lived in. Here at Rose Hill is the final resting place of some of the founders of Newburgh, of some of our first settlers. We have merchants, physicians, fishermen, ministers, ferrymen, innkeepers, grocers, lawyers, teachers, town clowns, boozers, fighters, town gossips, outstanding athletes, and the boy everybody thought would be president of the United States someday. There are some who died in mining accidents. One fell from a bridge, one who was killed in a brawl, and one who died in shameful childbirth. Wouldn't it be fun and extremely interesting to talk briefly to some of these people, what tales they could tell? In coming here this morning, we are inevitably remember. We remember the men and women who died in battle. We remember their names. We picture their faces. And when we do that, we do something important because we share a small portion of their lives we cherish and cling to. So let us honor the dead, cherish the living, and preserve in immortal memory the deeds and virtues of all people. Once they walked among us, laughing, yelling, whispering, keeping watch. We knew them well. We spoke to them. We took them by the hand. We loved them. They were our friends and our families, our heroes. And now in the crumbled earth, they are just our memories. Thank you.
Next on the program today, the Old Dam Community Band is going to play the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Would everyone please stand for this? please be seated. Next on our agenda is a roll call of departed veterans. Our chaplain, Nate Jurgis, is going to take care of this, assisted by Our Lady's Auxiliary.
Clarence L. Breezes.
Leroy Buckenberger.
Thomas A. Ellerman. Marion Garrett. Melvin L. Goldsinger. Larry D. Highland. Elizabeth G. Hopper. Terry G. Johnston. Bobby McIntosh. John J. Parker. John R. Shaw. Thomas P. Whitledge. Richard Wynn. James S. Yohe. Frenchie Boykin. Samuel Sanders.
Thank you, ladies. Next, we're going to have Going Home, played on the bagpipes by Amy Bloom. Thank you, Amy. Now we're going to have a poem by Ron McWilliams.
Before I start, for those of you who don't know it, we've got a love affair here at the cemetery with veterans. If you ever paid attention, we've got the Civil War rededication we done several years ago down at the bottom of the hill. Over here to the side, you'll see a little display. That's our proposed monument that we're hoping to build for the veterans of World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, and on up through 9/11 and the whole bit. If you get a chance, take a look at it. If you got something you might be interested in helping us with, we're going to get a bigger committee because we've got a lot of dreams. This thing is two-sided. The top is the front side, the back is the back side. It's got scenes of all the wars etched into the stone. It's all black granite. And it's going to cost a lot of money, but they're worth it. The poem is The Final Inspection, and the author's unknown. The soldier stood and faced God, which must always come to pass. He hoped his shoes were shining just as brightly as his brass. Step forward now, you soldier. How shall I deal with you? Have you always turned the other cheek? To my church have you been true? The soldier squared his shoulders and said, No, Lord, I guess I ain't. Because those of us who carry guns can't always be a saint. I've had to work most Sundays, and at times my talk was tough. And sometimes I've been violent because the world is awfully rough. But I never took a penny that wasn't mine to keep. Though I worked a lot of overtime when the bills got just too steep, and I never passed a cry for help, though at times I shook with fear. And sometimes, God forgive me, I wept unmanly tears. I know I don't deserve a place among the people here. They never wanted me around except to calm their fears. If you've a place for me here, Lord, it needn't be so grand. I never expected or had too much. But if you don't, I'll understand. There was silence all around the throne where the saints had often trod, as the soldier waited quietly for the judgment of his God. Step forward now, you soldier. You've borne your burdens well. Walk peacefully on heaven's streets. You've done your time in hell. And a footnote to this, it's the military, not the reporter, who has given us the freedom of press. It's the military, not the poet, who has given us the freedom of speech. It's the military, not the politicians, that ensure our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's the military who salutes the flag, who serves beneath the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Nate will now lead us in closing prayer.
Lord of hosts, be with us yet, so that we do not forget the noble efforts of the past in war and peace to preserve democracy and maintain order and sustain humanity in ways of peace and social justice. We honor the men and the women who have, with extreme courage, sacrificed themselves on the battlefields of life with compassion and concern for their fellow man. May a memorial to our fallen comrades be a living memorial of continuing effort in the cause for which they died. Go with us as we part and enable us by your gracious help to maintain in the world, indeed, the principles to which we have pledged ourselves as legionnaires. May yours be the glory and your children around the world be the grateful beneficiaries. Amen.
Amy Bloom will play Amazing Grace on the bagpipes.
I would like to make one announcement. St. John's is having a funeral at the present time. So we're going to have everybody up here go out our main gate, because it's blocked off down there so that we don't get a mess started here. So just be a little patient and smile at the person in front of you and behind you, and turn your air conditioner on and suck it up, and it's good.
Yes, sir. Buck, Chut. To the ready. Move. Load. Aim. Fire. Load. Aim. Fire. Load. Hey! Fire! Order! Arm! Freeze there! Arm! This concludes our portion to our departed comrades, sir.
Dismiss your men.
Squad, fall out. Pick up your brass. Good job.
That concludes our ceremony today. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. We had a pretty good turnout, and we've made it through the heat. So we'd like to welcome everyone down at our Legion post. If you'd like to come down, our kitchen is open. If you'd like to get something to drink, something to eat,
This is a Memorial Day program at Rose Hill Cemetery, May 26, 2012. Assembly music was Old Dam Community Band, and welcome by Bucky Honecker, and the National Anthem by Old National Community Band. Nathan George's Chaplain, Invocation, American the Beautiful by the Old Dam Community Band. Main address by Bucky Honecker, Commander, American Legion Post Capperman, Post number 44. Music medley by Armed Services songs with different services standing. Old Dam Community Band. Facts and trivia on the veterans and citizens. First year this was done by Kay Lant. Hymn Battle of the Republic. Roll Call of Departured Veterans. Roll Call of Departured Veterans. Then Bagpipes by Amy Bloom. Poem by Ron McWilliams. Benediction by Nathan Georges. Amazing Grace by Amy Bloom. And the Honor Guard. American Legion, Captain Post 44. 21 gun salute. New dedication, Rose Hill Cemetery for veterans. This is the front, and this is the back of a new monument for our veterans that have served the United States over the last 236 years.